Now, the government wasn't supposed to bail out Barclays Bank. They have steal this money, and the apartheid government have negotiated with this CODESA 1 and CODESA 2. And they discuss how they're going to steal this money and share it amongst them, which is your Ruperts, your Oppenheimers, your Herzofs, all these guys that's calling the big shots. You remember what his name was also in the negotiations, Cyril Ramaphosa. Why the ANC cannot deliver on the promise of nationalization of key sectors of the economic after being in power for almost 3 decades. In 1964, during the Rivonia trial, Nelson Mandela gave a statement that lasted for 4 hours in court. This came to be famously known as the speech from the dock, or informally as the I am prepared to die speech. Part of what he said was that the ideological greed of the ANC is and always has been. The greed of African nationalism is not the concept of African nationalism expressed in the cry, drive the white man into the sea. The African nationalism for which the ANC stands is the concept of freedom and fulfillment for the African people in their own land. The most important political document ever adopted by the ANC is the Freedom Charter. It is by no means a blueprint for socialist state. It calls for the redistribution, but not nationalization of land. It provides nationalization of mine, banks, monopoly industry, because big monopolies are owned by one race only. And without such nationalization, racial dominance would be perpetuated despite the spread of political power. This was the ANC political standpoint in 1964. But at the CODESA negotiations, the ANC renegade on political ideological of nationalism. I think at this point, I must point out that the ANC, which is drawn to the negotiations at CODESA, was a loosely organized and not well-coordinated body. Remember that the CODESA, before the CODESA, it can be argued that the ANC was divided into 3 entities. 1, ANC in the exile under supervision of Oliver Tambo, which was well organized and coordinated as well as a highly disciplined. 2, the ANC in prison, which was very loosely organized entity with Mandela being the main focus, but by no means a leader, in the same sense as Thabo led the exile organization. 3, at the third formation was the UDF, which to all appearance was perpetuated to be a visible front of the invisible underground exile ANC, but in reality was a separate political entity pushing an agenda very different from the ANC that was in exile. White monopoly capital, Oppenheimers, Ruperts, Wieses, Herzofs, Menel, and Gordons. The people we call, for lack of better word, WMC, which is now white monopoly capital, are the ones who made the National Party to sit down at the table and negotiate with the ANC, which was in exile. This progress began around in 1982, almost a decade before the actual CODESA began. Please note, the National Party was strong-armed into negotiations with the ANC by the establishment, which today we call WMC, to popular belief not to be threat of military confrontation by the Umkhonto weSizwe. There's a schoolwork that relates that the entire process from the beginning to end, cited, of course, very reliable, accurate sources. The same WMC, that's the white monopoly capital, got some of the high-ranking NP officials to start negotiation with Mandela in prison. This chronicle in Mandela's autobiography is Long Walk to Freedom. It is commonly knowledge that Ramaphosa from the days of NUM right up to the formation of the UDF had been picked, brushed, and groomed by the same white monopoly capital. So it's very obvious, if you look at it from the perspective that the ANC, which was negotiating at the CODESA, was speaking in three forgot tongues. Indecisions by the ANC to carry out the promises of nationalism is fueled by the different schools of thought within the ANC. These differences are what tear the ANC apart, as was evidenced by the proceeding at the recent conference in Nazareth. What we see happening today should not be misconstrued as the beginning of the rift, but as the accumulation schemes that had started even long before the CODESA. On the CODESA beneficiaries, what happened to the monies pre-1994? This document is actually confidential, the entire text. The full advance of all parties that has a viable interest in all current operations as discussed in the following up meeting with regards to the actions to the RB and other financial institutes who will assist in the full destruction of the assets with assistance of the ministers and the special advisors to these important matters is agreed to. Please ensure that the bulk of the actual investments be directed to the appropriate banking institute as agreed on. There should be no leaks, and the minimum activities announced, and all must be seen as normal transfers as per orders. This is now the order that the boss is giving to his puppets. And you know, the boss is Rupert, and is giving it now to Cyril, Trevor Manuel. When the monies get transferred, there must be minimal activities. You can't go every time to the bank, go look into it and transfer wherever you can. It must go slowly. You must be patient. This is what the boss is telling the puppets. From the incoming parties, as a matter of great concern to the Lesotho deals, another full operation must be clear that Mr. A.R. Suti and Bernard Glazer be treated as to the way we did with the Botswana deal once these acts are completed and all current assets and monies are transferred for the safekeeping by the periods by the appointed banks. We will then advise all parties of action taken, and it must be stressed that no paper trails will exist within the new orders as agreed with the settlement of the leaders. The current stockpile of precious metals and other valuable stones will be sealed, and the agents who will be set up, the companies abroad, has been advised to conclude all deals anticipated in the stocks of all assets. Now, this Suti that's now currently investigated, the Suti family is claiming to be their possession of money. It's not theirs, it's stolen money. As you can see here, Johan Rupert, Patrice Motsepe, Ramaphosa, they were all involved in this whole conglomerate to steal that money. I'm going to read it again. From the incoming parties, as a matter of great concern to the Lesotho deals, another full cooperation, it must be clear that Mr. A.R. Suti and Bernard Glaser be treated as the way we did with the Botswana deals once these acts are completed. So, Mr. Suti was part of this scam of stealing the money. Could this money be? You remember this, what do you call this investment that they've taken from us? Is this? So now this document confirmed. It's also from a document that was an email that was supposed to be destroyed. So I don't know who's Mr. Bernard Glaser or Glazier. He is part of that scam, and A.R. Suti is also part of this scam. So this is actually our money that they have stolen. There's trillions and trillions of rand. The full amounts disclosure will only be discussed at a later stage with the Lesotho ministers and the incoming leadership, and that will be advised and chaired by Mr. A. Rupert, with the banks being incorporated with the acceptance of Sambo Bank. Now, what these guys are doing, it's not just in South Africa. They use Lesotho Bank, Botswana Bank, Angola. All that ministers, they are also corrupt. And all of them are one and the same. So they're moving this money around so that it become untraceable. Sambo is also one of those banks that was in the corruption. Absa Bank or Barclays Bank, they all are corrupted banks that needs to be investigated. They need to be audited. They need to be held accountable. They need to pay all this money back. They make a company or a bank fall. Then they take all that money that's in the bank and they share it amongst them. And they take your or our tax money, then they pump it back into the bank, bailing the bank out with our money, and then they still have shares in those banks. This is what they have done. We will have a new heads of all, we will have the new heads of all of those banks as advisors, and they will play a very critical role in investments and other future potential deals. The following people will be added, and all documents must be disposed as agreed. Mr. Malherbe and Mr. Strydom will be delivering all the aspects of the bond investments, and the companies will be set up in conjunction with the Lusaka delegations. Now, what they have done is with our investments, this is now that investments, they take it, they hijack it, get trillions of rands, and they turn it into bonds, and it's shared amongst them, and then it comes back after they have accumulated all this interest, and then it comes back. So they've taken our money that we invest, and they do their things, and then they reverse it back if it comes back. If they depleted it, they depleted it. That's why another example can be Marcus Jooste with the government pension fund. Marcus Jooste have come here with nothing. It's our money that they have stolen. How can a company go on the stock market then they have zero all of a sudden? They've stolen the pension fund. Now they tell you you can't withdraw your 3 million or your 4 million. You must only get a pension of 15,000 a month because they've stolen the bulk of the money. Whether your father died tomorrow, you want to bury him and you want to borrow 50,000, you cannot do it. And it happened with, and I think that same conclusion is with FNB. The people that retired, they can't take the bulk of their money because they put clause in there. And that's how they know it was done. It was done like that. Why they got $3 or $50 million at home? You can't even have a 1 million at home, then SARS will lock you up. We appreciate the opportunity to respond to questions in Reftel. We should say up front that we do not interact much with Chris Hani, who prefers to leave the diplomatic context to others, nor do we often see Mbeki and Hani together except for occasional assemblage of the NEC members and some public platforms. We have not heard either man refer in any. Now, this is a very important document. Now, there's no doubt about where the money is coming from. Mr. Suti can't have trillions of dollars. Where did he get it? It's ours. And these guys have stolen it. Patrice, they have stolen it. All of them have stolen it. And now they are billionaires with our money, our sweat. And they have hijacked it. The Codesa. They don't want to talk about it. Now, what I'm going to do is, in court, when this document goes to court to claim back the land, even if they want to tell me about the Constitution of South Africa, which was drafted also by British company, like I've explained in the previous videos. Now, besides that, due that South Africa, and we're going to use this to our very advantage, due to South Africa belongs to the United Nations, is a member of the United Nations. And the government of South Africa was supposed to have such a subject as this, or topic like this in our curriculum. Because it's very important. And South Africa is very, very silent about the United Nations Declaration. Australia, Netherlands, all those other places, they are in there, and they've given the input what they're gonna do with the indigenous people, how they're gonna bring them into the society. Now, the United Nations Resolution A/RES/61/295. The resolution adopted by the General Assembly on 13th September 2007. 61/295 United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. It reads the following: guided by the purpose of the principle of this Charter of the United Nations and good faith and the fulfillment of the obligation assumed by the states in accordance with the Charter. This Charter of the United Nations are brought into consideration as for the Republic of South Africa being affiliated as a member to the United Nations. Concern that indigenous people have suffered from historical injustice as a result of inter alia, decolonization, and dispossession of their lands, territories, and resources, thus preventing them from exercising, in particular, their rights to develop in accordance with their own needs and interests. Welcome. The fact that indigenous people are organizing themselves for political, economic, and social and cultural enhancement, and in order to bring to an end all forms of discrimination and oppression wherever they occur. Acknowledging that the Charter of the United Nations in the International Covenant of Economic, Social and Cultural Rights and the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, as well as the Wiener Declaration Program of Action, affirm the fundamental importance of the right to self-determination of all people by virtue of which they freely define their political status and freely pursue their economic, social, and cultural development. Now, in this section, when we file for 95% of this country, we're going to do it under self-determination. That means no more ANC, no more COSATU, no more nothing. We're going to form our own political culture. The people, we're going to form. That's why I said I'll give you that 1 million so that we can all prosper. Encouraging states to comply with the effectively implementing on all their obligations as they apply to the indigenous people under international instruments, in particular those related to human rights in consultation and cooperation with the peoples concerned. Article 4. Indigenous people, in exercising their rights to self-determination, have the right to autonomy or self-government in the matters relating to the internal and local affairs, as well as ways and means for financing the autonomous function. Article 10. Indigenous people shall not be forcefully removed from their lands or territories. No relocation shall take place without a free, prior, and informed consent in the indigenous people in concern, and after agreement on just and fair compensation where possible, with the option to return. Now, everybody or every mining magnate in private games reserve is on private land, Mahobe's land. They will pay compensation from 1887 up until now. That's the only compensation. And then from there, they must leave. Because we want to return, we want to take back our land. Article 11.1. Indigenous people have the right to practice and revitalize their cultural tradition and customs. This includes the right to maintain, protect, develop the past, present, and the future. Manifestation of their cultural, such as archaeologists and historical sites, artifacts, design, ceremonies, technologies, and visual performing of literature. So that means all the artifacts that you find in Mapungube will be returned to the original owners. And what I'm doing here, I'm going to give the whole history as it was in the past and how it's supposed to go forward to the future. All these lies of the European history will be taken out of the curriculum. Article 26.1. Indigenous people have the right to lands, territories, and resources which they have traditionally owned, occupied, and otherwise used or acquired. There it says, Article 26, which I argue, you can't have a title deed. A title deed is for Europeans. We have traditionally owned. They have sidelined us so that we can't have a title deed. Now the title deed overpower our tradition. It's not supposed to be like that. Not supposed to be like that. 26.2. Indigenous people have the right to own, use, develop, and control the lands, territories, resources as they possess by reason of traditional ownership or other traditional occupation or use, as well as which they have otherwise acquired. States shall give legal recognition to the protection of these lands, territories, and resources. Such recognition shall be conducted with a due respect to the custom, tradition, and the land tenure system of the indigenous people concerned. Now there it says, government does not own land. They are the curator. They're supposed to be in 1994, do the correct history, and they know the correct history, but they were after that money. And they've sidelined all these chiefs and kings that's now here are fake kings. Now, bearing in mind that nothing in this declaration may be used to deny any people their right to self-determination, exercise in comfort with international law. They cannot deny us. With all the facts that I've got there, we laid it to plain, and they can't deny us. Now, if South Africa is corrupt during this process, we can lodge a complaint and take it international to a land, any land of neutral.